So looking forward, can you give me 3 predictions for the next 5 years?
For the next 5 years?
Sure. Or
Prediction for the next 5 years is we will have a multi-platform measurement through Nielsen by next year. We will have the ability to look at C3 impressions, TV, and broadband by next year. So I think that's one prediction that I think is good for us and good for the business and good for the industry, because we think it's important that we account for all the impressions that are actually delivered. Now I have to come up with 2 other predictions. Change will continue and is inevitable. And those of us who will succeed are the ones who can be the most nimble. We may not be the smartest. We may not be the most prescient or the ones who can predict the future, because if I could predict what was going to happen 2 years from now, look, I can't even predict what the stock market's going to do tomorrow. I can't predict what the media world is going to be like 2 or 3 years or even 5 years from now. I think that anybody who thinks they know doesn't really know. And the third thing is, I think we will find a way to drive to quality research, and that the people who provide us with the kind of metrics that aren't appropriate, that are low quality, will get marginalized by the large media companies who refuse to pay for that kind of data. So those of us who require transparency, those of us who require quality, those of us who require firm research upon which to make business decisions, I think in this case the good will drive out the bad. At least I hope so.
that brings us to an interesting subject which has been brought up before, the quality of research. Where do you think the quality of research has been? Where do you think it is today? And how do you tell the difference between good quality and bad quality research?
I think the first question is, where has it been and where is it going? I think there are certain fundamental principles that apply to good research that aren't going to change. If you don't have a census and you need it, then you need a sample. If you need a sample, the sample has to be representative. If you accept less than a representative sample, then you have to accept the risk involved in having data that may not represent the world at large. And we're all aware of the fact that sample rates and response rates are declining. And we need to have a gauge of the degree to which that causes bias, because it's bias that's going to cause us problems. And so when the race is close, that bias will be very important. We learned that in Truman versus Dewey. But when the race is not close, the bias may not be particularly important. So a lot of it has to do with the precision we require to run our businesses and to make business decisions. How do I tell the difference? First, I look to see whether they're asking the respondent to do more than I think the respondent is capable of doing. You can't ask we know you can't ask the respondent to reliably tell you how much time they spend with media. We know they underestimate television, they overestimate other media. So when it comes to media exposure, we know that from the CRE, and we've always known that people aren't able to explain not only what they do, but they don't even understand their motivations. But if you ask them, of course, they'll come up with some answer. So, if you ask people if they are engaged in a certain piece of content, they might say, if you believed in what people said or what they really wanted to watch or what they're engaged in, PBS would be #1, and nobody watches wrestling or uses the internet for pornography. So what happens instead is, you need to get beyond that and start saying, how do I get accurate and reliable measures? Because if I could believe what people said, I could save a lot of money with Nielsen. I wouldn't need that. I could just ask people what they watched. But we know that doesn't work, and advertisers demand and deserve more. And the other is, I think we need to find the appropriate measures for those questions we're asking. If we're asking engagement, we're asking people to tell us how involved they are with a certain piece of content. I'm not sure that asking them is the best way. We've used biological measures to get at those types of processes, and they are very effective at doing those kinds of things. So I think if you measure what you're looking to measure in the right way, you're going to end up with quality research. If you try to take shortcuts and ask people what the right thing is or what the world is like, it's not going to work.